The nights in Haining City are always so hot, with neon lights on the streets dazzled. The white leaders in the building just got off work, and they rushed into the restaurants or bars along the road. The air was filled with the aroma of coffee and the smell of sea. Lin Ziran stood at the door of a high-end restaurant, holding a bottle of mineral water in his hand, and his eyes kept glancing in. Today was a gathering that Zhou Hao, the dead party, forced him to attend. He said what the old classmates' reunion was. In fact, Ziran knew in his heart that 80% of the guy wanted to introduce him to the target again. Since breaking up 3 years ago, Zhou Hao has been talking in his ears, "You should let it go, brother, the new beginning is waiting for you." But Ziran never wanted to let go. The hurdle in his heart has been in 3 years, but it has not been able to pass through. The name Xiaoqing is like a scar engraved on his heart, causing pain from time to time. He thought that time could sluggish everything, but every time he heard her name, or accidentally saw something she liked, such as the mango smoothie sold on the road, or the signature iron of a coffee shop, his heart was as if he was caught by something and couldn't breathe. "Hey, what are you stupid? Everyone is here, I'll wait for you." Zhou Hao poked out from the restaurant and waved his hand at him impatiently. This guy was wearing a fancy shirt and his hair was greasy and shiny, and he looked like he was going to meet him than Ziran. Ziran curled her lips and replied unhappily, "What's the hurry? Am I here?" When I walked into the restaurant, I was already very enthusiastic. There were more than a dozen people sitting on the long table, including college classmates that year and friends I met later, and everyone was having a lot of chats. Ziran glanced casually and was ready to find a corner to sit down so that Zhou Hao would not be dragged to talk more with whom again. But at this moment, his vision suddenly froze on a figure, and the whole person seemed to be struck by lightning and could not move. Xiaoqing. She sat at the head of the table beside the window, wearing a simple white shirt, her hair casually shaped like a low horsetail, and a light makeup on her face. Her temperament was clean and sparse. She was lowering her head and saying something to the person beside her, with a pure smile on the corner of her mouth, making Ziran's heart feel like she was being squeezed hard. After 3 years, she seemed to have changed, but she seemed to have not changed at all. It's still so beautiful, but it's still the feeling that he can tell at a glance. "Ziran, come here." Zhou Hao's voice pulled him back from his daze. Only then did Ziran realize that he was standing there, staring at someone like a fool. He lowered his head and cleared his throat, pretended to be inappropriate, and walked towards the position where Zhou Hao pointed. But, fate loves to joke with him. The empty space Zhou Hao pointed to was only 2 people away from Xiaoqing. After sitting down, Ziran tried his best to make himself look natural, holding his mobile phone and pretending to brush something, but actually didn't read a word on it. His remaining glance unconsciously glanced at Xiaoqing, wondering if she had noticed her. But Xiaoqing seemed to have not noticed his existence at all, chatting with the girl beside her, occasionally clicking and laughing. The cold attitude made Ziran feel a little disappointed. "Xiaoqing, what are you doing recently? I heard that you have been promoted to the post, it's so bad." The girl sitting next to Xiaoqing suddenly raised her voice, as if she was deliberately trying to let everyone on the table hear it. Ziran realized that it was Manlin, Xiaoqing's iron honey. She didn't ask him for trouble that year, and always thought he was not worthy of Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing smiled and said calmly, "It's nothing, but the company has a big project recently and is so busy that it's a bit difficult to open up." "What's the promotion for?" "It depends on the luck." "Come on, what are you called sports? Then what are these people? Are we purely lying on faces to make a living?" Manlin rolled her eyes, her language was full of hymns, but her eyes were filled with pride for Xiaoqing. Ziran heard it, and the 5 cents in his heart were chaotic. He knew that Xiaoqing had been working very hard. When they were together that year, she often stayed up late to work overtime, and could change a plan more than 10 times. But at that time, he always thought she was too hard and even quarreled with her over this matter, saying that she was not a good friend. Now thinking about it, she was so stupid. "Ziran, what about you? What are you doing recently? You heard that you have opened a small company and your business is good?" Zhou Hao and others didn't know whether it was intentional or something, but suddenly gave him the question. Ziran was stunned. When he raised his head, he realized that Xiaoqing's vision finally swept towards him, but his eyes were as cold as if he was looking at a stranger. It's okay, just do it. Ziran snatched his head and smiled a little embarrassedly. He actually didn't want to talk about his business in front of Xiaoqing. Over the years, he has indeed founded a small company to do some design business and be able to survive. But compared to Xiaoqing's job elite image, he always felt that he was a little bit inferior. Xiaoqing didn't say anything, just lowered her head and took a sip of water, as if she was indifferent to his answer. Ziran's heart sank, and he was still holding his mouth hard, trying to find a question. Xiaoqing, have you been doing well recently? As soon as this sentence was released, there seemed to be a layer of pressure suddenly in the air. Xiaoqing put her hand on her face, raised her head and looked at him, with no temperature in her eyes. It's pretty good, thank you for caring. Just like this, Ziran felt as if she had been swept into a basin of cold water, and her heart was filled with joy. He knew that Xiaoqing would not give him a good face, but they were so hard to see when they broke up that year. But when he really heard her speak in this kind of language, he still couldn't help but feel heartbroken. Chen Manlin sneered from the side and interrupted, Ziran, isn't Xiaoqing so good? It doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, right? We are all old classmates, just chat with you, don't ask too many questions. This was like a knife, directly stabbing Ziran's heart. He smiled embarrassedly, and did not answer any more. He lowered his head and poked the dishes in the plate with chopsticks, and the brain was in a mess. After 3 years, he thought he could at least say a few words to her normally, but now it seems that Xiaoqing's defense against him was deeper than he thought. Halfway through the game, Ziran had no time to stay. He found an excuse and said that the company had something to deal with, so he got up and prepared to leave. When Zhou Hao saw his strife, Lima followed him out and stopped him. Hey, brother, are you having sex? After finally seeing each other, are you leaving? What are you going to do? I just have a good atmosphere. Ziran replied without any worries, pushed open the restaurant door and walked to the street outside. The night wind in Haining City was filled with a slight whisper on his face, making his brain wake up a little. Zhou Hao leaned against the door, clicked a cigarette, vomited a smoke circle, and his language was filled with chanting. Why, when I saw Xiaoqing, my legs were soft. Change. Ziran glared at him, but he knew in his heart that this guy was right. He was indeed unpromising. When he saw the sunny moment, no rationality or preparation was used. Seriously, can't you let it go? Zhou Hao put away his joking spirit and looked at him seriously. Things of that year have passed. Xiaoqing is doing well now, so don't stop yourself. Ziran didn't say anything, just looked down at the tiles under her feet, and was silent for a while before she said, I can't let it go. I was wrong that year, I didn't explain clearly, and I didn't keep her. Now when I see her, I still think. I can't just let it go. Zhou Haoyan sighed and patted his shoulder. Okay, if you really want to get it back, I will help you. But I have to remind you that Xiaoqing is not the little girl that year. The wall in her heart is much higher than you think. Are you sure you have to wade through this situation? Ziran raised her head, and there was a hint of determination in her eyes. Okay. I will always have what I owe her. When I got home that night, Ziran was lying on the bed, her brain full of Qing's shadow. Her indifference, her distantness, and the words "it's good, thank you for your concern," which cut his heart one after another. He knew that Xiaoqing would not easily imprison him, but he also knew that he could no longer escape. He didn't know how to cherish that year, but now, he has to prove with his actions that he is still the one worthy of her love. The next morning, Ziran got up early, ran to a breakfast shop near Xiaoqing's company building, and bought her favorite bean paste and sauté. He remembered that when they were still together that year, Xiaoqing always said that the pots in this restaurant were the best in Haining City. Every time he worked late overtime, he would go to her on a special road to buy a copy. Standing under the building of Xiaoqing Company, Ziran felt a little drumming in her heart. He didn't know if Xiaoqing would accept it, Nor did he know what reaction she would react when she saw her. But he was still hard on his head, holding breakfast, and waiting for her to appear. At about 8:30, Xiaoqing's figure finally appeared at the entrance of the main building. She was wearing a professional dress and holding a document in her hand. She walked very quickly with her head down, as if she had not noticed the people around her at all. Ziran took a deep breath, plucked up his courage and walked over, trying to say hello in the most natural language. "It's sunny, it's so early." Xiaoqing was stunned. When she raised her head and saw that it was him, her eyebrows slightly said, "Why are you here?" I'll bring you breakfast when I passed by." Ziran passed the bag over and smiled a little tightly. "Didn't you like the Saudis in this store the most before?" Xiaoqing glanced at the bag, and there was no slight look in her eyes, but she just said lightly, "Thank you, but I have eaten it." "You don't have to come here to deliver these things in detail, and you won't come in the future." After saying that, she didn't look at him anymore, turned around and walked into the building. Ziran stood there, the bag in her hand was not taken back at any time, and the whole person seemed to be trapped. He thought he could at least change to a gentle rejection, but Xiaoqing's indifference caught him off guard. But he did not retreat. In the next few days, Ziran went to Xiaoqing's company building to report it almost every day, either giving breakfast or a cup of coffee. One time she even brought her a coupon. But Xiaoqing's attitude has never changed. It is necessary to refuse coldly and simply put on the decoration without seeing it. He knew that Xiaoqing was still blaming him in his heart, but he also knew that some things could not be changed overnight. That night, Ziran was rejected by Xiaoqing again, sat on the bench near the company and called Zhou Hao. "Howzy, do you think I'm a special person? I know she won't wait for me to see me, but I still have to go up." Zhou Hao smiled at the head. "I don't know whether to pay or not, but I know you are really concerned. I'm chasing my daughter-in-law, how can I do it? But I have to remind you that Xiaoqing is not easy to fool now, you have to show some real skills." "Really capable." Ziran murmured and repeated it, and a thought suddenly flashed in his brain. Xiaoqing is now a job elite and she will definitely be under a lot of pressure at work. If he can help her solve some actual problems, will she be able to change her mind? Thinking of this, Ziran suddenly felt a little dynamic. He began to pay attention to the movements of Xiaoqing's company, and even asked Zhou how to listen to it to see if there was anything he could do to help. He knew that this path to pursuing his wife was destined to be uneasy, but he also knew that if he didn't try it, he would not be willing to be so happy. On the other side, Xiaoqing sat in the office, looking at the sky gradually getting dark outside the window, and her heart was a little confused. Lin Ziran's appearance made her feel that she had already calmed down and began to fall into trouble again. She told herself that the past had already been over, but every time she saw Ziran's familiar face, she still couldn't help but think of the sweetness and pain of that year. "Xiqing, don't leave after get off work? Do you work overtime again?" Chen Manlin pushed in, holding 2 cups of coffee in her hand, and gave her a cup. Xiaoqing took the coffee and smiled reluctantly. "Well, there is a plan that has not been completed yet." Manlin sat opposite her, looked at her with her eyes and suddenly said, "Is it because of Lin Ziran? You are absent-minded for these days, right?" Xiaoqing was stunned and hurriedly refused. "How is that possible? I haven't cared anymore." "Come on, who are you chaotic about this expression?" Manlin curled her lips, her voice full of disgust. "That guy is coming to block you every day now. Are you really not nervous about giving this and that person?" Xiaoqing was silent, lowered her head and slapped the coffee in the cup, and then said in a low voice, "So what's going on with your heart? I can't forget what happened that year. What he is doing now may be just a little excited, and I don't want to pay it again." Manlin sighed and patted her on the shoulder. "Okay, as long as you have a lot in your heart. But I have to remind you that Ziran, although she was a bastard back then, seems to regret it now. If you don't want to give him a chance, you should explain it clearly earlier, don't let him get angry and mislead you." It was a little clear, but I was not so sure in my heart. She knew that Ziran's appearance had caused a turbulence in her life, and this trial just began. In the early morning of Haining, there is always a wetness of sea wind. the breakfast steak on the street has begun to get busy. The fragrance of oil and the heat of beans are mixed in the air, making people feel refreshed. Lin Ziran stood on the corner of the street under the Xiaoqing company building, holding a bag of just-buy breakfast in her hand, her eyes wandering a little. He has been in a row for several days, and every day he has sent things with hope, but he always changes to the cold and cold rejection. Today he still couldn't help but come again, and he felt in his heart that if he continued like this, could he really motivate her? Just as Usia was thinking, Xiaoqing's figure walked out from the entrance of the building. She was wearing a clean gray suit dress, holding her cell phone in her hand, and walked quickly with her head down, as if she had not noticed the people around her at all. Ziran took a deep breath, plucked up his courage and walked over quickly, and tried to say hello in the most natural language. "Xiaoqing, it's so early, I brought you breakfast again. The buns in this restaurant are very delicious. Are you trying?" Xiaoqing raised her head and saw that it was him. She walked for a moment, her eyebrows slightly raised, and her language was filled with impatience. "Ziran, I said that you don't need to give them these. If you have this time, is it not good to have something else?" Ziran was stunned by this, and the bag in her hand was still in the air, so embarrassed that she didn't know whether to take it back or continue to hang it. He smiled reluctantly and tried to make a quiet and elegant atmosphere. I'm just a smooth road, no different. You're busy with yours, so you can just take it as a prep." Xiaoqing didn't answer, and glanced at him coldly, then walked over him and walked straight into the building. Ziran stood there, watching her back disappear from the elevator door, and the breakfast bag in her hand seemed to have turned into a potato with a burning hand. He sniffed, stuffed the bag into the trash can next to him with his hands, and turned around and leaned against the stalk on the road, with a terrible brain in his arms. "Brother, are you rejected again?" Zhou Hao's voice suddenly appeared from the side. Ziran turned around and saw that the guy was holding a cigarette in his mouth and leaning against the road lights that were far away, looking at the look of the bell. "Stop talking." Ziran glared at him without any worries and turned around and wanted to leave, but Zhou Hao caught up with him a few times, stopped him, and smiled with a smile. "Don't hurry to leave. To be honest, you can't do this trick. Who wouldn't give breakfast and coffee? Xiaoqing is a big guy now, and she doesn't care about your little favor. You have to come and help her solve the real problem, and maybe she has a chance." "Are you a real problem?" Ziran stopped and suddenly flashed a message he heard a few days ago. Xiaoqing Company recently competed for a big project and heard that the pressure was particularly strong, and everyone in the team was almost in a hurry. If he could help him, wouldn't he be able to change his mind to him? Thinking of this, Ziran's eyes lit up and she turned around and asked Zhou Hao, "Do you know the people from Xiaoqing Company? Can you help me to listen? Where's their project stuck?" Zhou Hao heard this and was happy, patted his shoulder. "Okay, I finally started to speak. I have a brother who works in Xiaoqing's company. I will help you ask. But I have to remind you that Xiaoqing is very cautious. Even if you help her, she may not be in love. Don't have too much hope. I have to try it regardless of whether I have mercy or not." Ziran gritted her teeth, and there was a hint of determination in her eyes. He knew that this road was not easy to walk, but if he didn't do anything, he would never let go of the unwillingness in his heart. On the other side, Xiaoqing sat in the office, staring at the data table on the computer screen. Her brain was a little distracted. Lin Ziran's discussion for the past few days is false, but she also had some unclear feelings in her heart. When they broke up that year, she thought she had buried this relationship cleanly, but Ziran's appearance still made her feel a little confused. "Xiaoqing, the project group will begin immediately. Are you ready?" Chen Manlin pushed in, holding a piece of document in her hand, and her language was filled with a hurried voice. Xiaoqing came back to her senses, clicked a little, got up and followed her to the meeting room. This time, the company project is a large number of commercial real estate developments in the new district of Haining City. There are many competitors and the pressure is so high that people can't breathe. As one of the project's responsible persons, Xiaoqing works overtime almost every day and even her sleep time is reduced to the minimum. At the meeting, the team members reported progress one by one, and the problem was not scattered, especially in the design plan. The requirements of the partners were changed again and again, resulting in severe progress. Xiaoqing, the design is really too high. The other party asked to see a new plan next week, but we don't have enough staff at all. The team responsible for the design faced bitterly, and his language was full of helplessness. Xiaoqing rubbed the son's hole and kept it calm. I'll think about it again and contact several outsourcing companies to see if I can borrow some people. You should sort out the existing parts first, so don't make any mistakes. After the meeting, Xiaoqing returned to the office, leaned against the chair, closed her eyes and calmed down. This project was too important to her, not only to the interests of the company, but also to her position in the field. But the greater the pressure, the more exhausted she felt in her heart. Sometimes she couldn't help but wonder, if she hadn't broken up that year, would there be someone who could rely on her now? As soon as this thought came out, she suddenly opened her eyes, slammed her head, and threw it out of her brain. Lin Ziran? Don't joke, he could disappoint her back then, what can he expect now? At the same time, Ziran has already obtained some news through Zhou Hao. It turns out that the project of Xiaoqing Company is indeed stuck in the design plan, with heavy time and heavy tasks, and the people in the team are almost dying. After hearing this, Ziran suddenly had a big idea in her heart. Although his small company is not large in size, it is still a business related to design. If she can take on this part of the work and help Xiaoqing solve her urgent needs, she might be able to look at her with admiration. Howsy, if I take the initiative to take on this job, will Xiaoqing think I'm deliberately treating her? Ziran asked in a hesitation. After all, he knew that Xiaoqing was very cautious about him now. Zhou Hao rolled his eyes and vomited a smoke circle. What's wrong with it? Doesn't you have to wear a thick face when chasing a daughter-in-law? But you have to be mentally prepared. This job is not easy. Can those people in your company stand it? You have to bear it even if you can't stand it. Ziran gritted her teeth and made up her mind. In the next few days, he began to make every effort to prepare. He first contacted the person responsible for Xiaoqing Company to contact him, and expressed his willingness to take on some of the design outsourcing work at a low price. At the same time, he also brought in several capable employees in the company and worked night after night to get out the preliminary plan. A few days later, Ziran took the plan and went to Xiaoqing Company with a tough plan. He did not look for Xiaoqing directly, but contacted another responsible person in the project group and passed the plan over. The other party looked at the plan and was quite satisfied. He made the decision to let him participate in it. Ziran was delighted. Although Xiaoqing had no expression yet, he felt that this was at least a good start. However, after Xiaoqing knew about this, she was not as moved as he thought. She called Ziran to the office and closed the door. Her language was as cold as the ringing. Lin Ziran, what do you mean? What can I change by doing something to help me? Ziran was stunned and quickly explained, Xiaoqing, I don't mean anything. I just heard that your projects are short of staff, and my company can help you, so you just take the initiative to get in? Xiaoqing cut him off, her eyes filled with defense. Ziran, I don't need you to help you, nor do you need to approach me in this way. You go, I will tell the group that I will take over this matter. Ziran's heart sank, and he still said hard, Xiaoqing, I really didn't think so much. I know you don't wait to see me, but this matter has nothing to do with personal relationships, it's pure cooperation. You have a tight time, can I help you, why don't you try it? Xiaoqing was silent for a few seconds, and there was a flash of movement in her eyes, but she soon returned to her indifference. Okay, cooperation is okay, but it's limited to work. Don't expect me to change your view on you because of this. Although this was cold, Ziran still felt relieved. At least, she didn't refuse directly, which was a small victory for him. In the following days, Ziran devoted almost all her energy to this project, working overtime with Xiaoqing's team every day, changing plans, running on the field, and even not having a break on weekends. His company had fewer staff, and at a loss, several employees were almost exhausted, but he still gritted his teeth and snatched his teeth because he knew that this was the only opportunity to let Xiaoqing see his kindness. Slowly, although Xiaoqing didn't say anything, her attitude was a little more peaceful. Several times after working overtime until late at night, Ziran helped her to go to the building to buy coffee. When she passed, she would say thank you. Although her language was still cold, it had made a lot of progress compared to before. Ziran was secretly excited in his heart, feeling that he had touched a little hope. But at this moment, an unexpected character appeared, making this slight progress a mess. This person is Zhang Yifan, who is the new manager of Xiaoqing Company. He is 30 years old, has a strong talent and strong ability. He said that he has won several large orders just after entering the company. He was very vague about Xiaoqing and often found various reasons to approach her, either giving her a cup of coffee or taking the initiative to help her share the work, which made many people in the company gossip and said that he was interesting to Xiaoqing. The first time Ziran met Zhang Yifan was at a project meeting. This guy was wearing a straight suit, his words were clearly sorted out, and he felt confident in his every move. After the meeting, he walked to Xiaoqing's body and said a few words in a low voice. Xiaoqing actually smiled. Although it was just a touch of Jing-Qing, Ziran saw it in his eyes and felt like he was stabbed hard by something in his heart. Howzy, do you think the Zhang surname is interesting to Xiaoqing? After the meeting, Ziran pulled Zhou Hao to the side, his language was filled with a sour smell. Zhou Hao glanced at him and was happy. Wonder, do you still need to ask? The conditions are better than you and his work ability is stronger. Isn't it normal to chase Xiaoqing? But don't worry, Xiaoqing is not that easy to move. What you have to do now is to stay calm and don't worry about your feet first. But how can Ziran be stable? In the next few days, as long as he saw Zhang Yifan talking to Xiaoqing, he felt very upset. Especially Zhang Yifan's indifferent attentiveness made him even more restless. He began to doubt himself, feeling that compared with Zhang Yifan, he seemed to be unable to do anything. Xiaoqing had no good feelings for him, and now she has a competitive opponent with such good conditions. Is it hard to really collapse in his journey to pursue his wife? That night, after working overtime, Ziran watched Xiaoqing and Zhang Yifan walk out of the office together, and the two of them walked and chatted, and occasionally she could hear Xiaoqing smile. He felt sore in his heart, and he couldn't help but follow, wanting to hear what they were saying. But as soon as he approached a few steps, Xiaoqing discovered him. He turned his head and looked at him, with a little confusion in his eyes. Ziran, are you doing something? Ah, it's nothing, it's okay, it's just a smooth road. Ziran slapped in embarrassment and made an excuse. Zhang Yifan smiled aside, chanting with a little bit in his mouth, President Lin, why don't you leave if you're too late? It seems that I'm really concerned about this project. Ziran smiled violently, and wanted to find a place to diamond in his heart. He knew that Zhang Yifan had probably seen this by his side, but what could he do? Seeing Xiaoqing get so close to another man, the jealousy in his heart was about to get angry. Xiaoqing, I'll take you back, it's a smooth road. Zhang Yifan suddenly opened his mouth, and his language seemed natural as if it was natural. Xiaoqing was stunned for a moment, and shook her head and refused. No, I just need to drive myself. Don't be polite, it's too late, a girl is not safe. Zhang Yifan smiled and insisted. Xiaoqing hesitated for a moment, but he didn't refuse again. Ziran stood aside and watched them walk towards the parking lot together. His heart seemed to be hollowed out. He clenched his fists and told himself that he could not just recognize it, but the feeling of powerlessness was still coming up like a tide, making him breathless. On the other side, Xiaoqing sat in Zhang Yifan's car, feeling a little confused. She knew that Zhang Yifan had a good impression of her, but she had no idea about this good impression. I just asked him to give it to me, but because I was too tired, I didn't want to give it up again. But she also noticed that Ziran's eyes just looked at her were full of loss and reluctance. She told herself that she shouldn't care about these things, but she still couldn't help but feel a sensation in her heart. Xiaoqing, you have known General Lin for a long time, have you? Zhang Yifan suddenly opened his mouth and tried to find out in his language. Xiaoqing was stunned and replied indifferently, well, old classmate. It seems that he is very concerned about you. Zhang Yifan smiled and did not continue this topic. Xiaoqing didn't answer, but just turned around and looked out the window. The lights were bright in Haining City under the night, but her heart seemed to be blocked by something, and she was panicked. A few days later, the project finally reached the key stage. Xiaoqing's team worked overtime, and finally finalized the plan and submitted it to the partner. Ziran's company has also received a lot of good reviews for this cooperation, and even received some new businesses. But his mood was not getting better at all. Zhang Yifan's existence was like a thorn, piercing himself in his heart, and he could not be pulled out no matter how hard he was. That night, Ziran sat alone on the roadside, holding a bottle of beer in his hand, and his brain was full of pictures of Xiaoqing and Zhang Yifan. He began to wonder whether his efforts during this period were intentional. Although Xiaoqing's attitude towards him was a little calmer, the blocked wall was still so high that he could not see hope. Maybe he really should let go and don't let himself be so bad. But at this moment, the phone suddenly started to rise, and it was Zhou Hao's phone call. "Ziran, where are you? Xiaoqing's company has an enthusiastic meeting tonight." She drank some wine and was sitting on the road, and the situation was not right. "Do you want to go and take a look?" Ziran heard this and felt nervous, and then stood up. "Where is she?" "I'll go there right away." After hanging up the phone, he grabbed his coat and quickly headed towards the place Zhou Hao said. The night wind in Haining City was a little cool, but his heart was burned with this news. Lin Ziran ran and his heart beat like a drum, and the night wind blew on his face with a bit of harsh bang, but he couldn't see these at all. The address Zhou Hao said is near a small alley in the center of Haining. It is not far from the sea. It is a restaurant selected by Xiaoqing Company's Qinghua Club. When Ziran was panting, she saw Su Xiaoqing sitting alone on the bench on the roadside, with her head slightly lowered, holding a bottle of mineral water in her hand, and an empty wine glass was placed beside her. The dim light of the road light hit her, looking a little lonely. He slowed down, tried to calm his breath, and walked over carefully. Xiaoqing didn't seem to notice his arrival, and looked at the ground with her head lowered, her face a little red, as if she had really drunk a lot. Ziran stopped a few steps away from her, hesitated for a moment, and opened her voice lightly. "Xiaoqing, are you okay?" Xiaoqing heard the sound and raised her head slowly. Seeing that it was him, there was a flash of surprise in her eyes, but soon became calm again. She didn't say anything, just slammed the head and turned the video open, as if she was polite to him. Ziran felt nervous, but she still sat down beside her with her head, keeping a little distance, and tried to ask, "Have you finished your fun?" Xiaoqing finally opened her mouth, with a little sand in her voice, as if she had drunk too much wine and had an aftermortem. "What's the matter with you?" "I'll leave after I'll be there, I don't have to worry about it." Although this was cold, Ziran heard it, it was not as harsh as before. He knew that Xiaoqing was stubborn, but her current side-like appearance was actually uneasy. He said in a low voice, "I either want to care about you or I worry about you. It's too late. If you have anything to do with me, Lin Ziran, please don't do this." Xiaoqing stopped him and glared at him, with a little impatient look in her eyes, but it was more of an indescribable emotion. "Do you think I'm moved by what you say now? Why didn't you ever want to worry about me back then? What good guy are you wearing now?" This was like a knife, poking straight into Ziran's heart. He lowered his head and was silent for a while, then smiled bitterly and said, "I know that I was my bastard back then, because I didn't cherish you. I don't expect you to be able to imprison me, but I really don't want to see you alone outside so late. If you don't want to see me, I'll take you home and I'll leave when I get there. Will you do it?" Xiaoqing didn't say anything, just stared at him for a few seconds, then sneered, stood up, and walked forward staggeringly. "You don't need to send me away, I can go back by myself." But she just walked 2 steps, then she shook her body and almost fell down. Ziran had quick eyes and quick hands, and held her arm with a hand, her voice filled with anxiety. "Xiaoqing, don't be strong, okay? I'll send you back, I guarantee you won't say anything." Xiaoqing slapped for a while, but it didn't open, and I felt angry after flashing across my face, but in the end I didn't refuse. She said in a low voice, "I'll do it for you," and then let Ziran support her and walk towards the taxi on the road. Ziran relaxed her voice and carefully held her, as if she was afraid that she would fall down again. On the taxi, Xiaoqing leaned against the window, closed her eyes and said nothing, as if she was asleep. Ziran sat next to her, glanced at her for a few glances, and found that the fatigue on her face could not be hidden. She has hardly had a break for the project these days, and now she finally relaxes, and her whole person looks so fragile that it makes people feel distressed. He silenced his voice, took off his coat, put it on her, and turned his head to look out the window, stopping her from slapping her. The car soon arrived at the small area where Xiaoqing lived. Ziran paid the car and patted her on the shoulder lightly. "Xiaoqing, come, wake up." Xiaoqing opened her eyes quietly, looked at him in a daze, then sat up straight, took off her coat, and her voice was still cold. "Thank you, I'll just go up by myself." "No, I'll take you to the door." Ziran held on and helped her get off the car, and took her all the way down to her house. Xiaoqing didn't refuse anymore, but just walked down. When she arrived at the entrance of the building, she stopped walking and turned to look at him. Her eyes finally had a complicated look. "Ziran, you don't need to do this. I know what you want to fuck, but some things are gone, and there is no need to pick them up again." Ziran's heart sank, but he still smiled reluctantly. "I don't want to pick up anything. I just want you to know. I regret it. What happened back then was my fault. I didn't explain it clearly, nor did I keep you. What I'm doing now is not to make you clear, but just to remedy it. Even if you don't love it, I agree." Xiaoqing was silent, and there was a flash of ripple in her eyes, but she quickly became under pressure again. She said good night in a low voice, then turned and walked into the building, without the chance to talk to him again. Ziran stood there, watching her back disappear behind the elevator door, and her heart was empty. He knew that Xiaoqing's heart wall had not been removed, but he also knew that tonight would be at least a small improvement. In the next few days, Ziran no longer blocked Xiaoqing every day like before. He began to reflect on himself, thinking that chasing her might only make her more disgusted. So he put his focus back on his work, and seriously ran the company. Occasionally, he heard Xiaoqing's situation through Zhou Hao, and no longer took the initiative to appear in front of her. He wanted to give her some space and some time to think about how to continue this relationship. And here, life has returned to peace. After the project was over, her work pressure was much less, but there was always a sense of indescribable void in her heart. Ziran suddenly stopped appearing, which made her feel a little uncomfortable. Sometimes when she left work and walked down the company building, she would look around unconsciously, as if she was looking forward to something. But whenever this thought pops up, she will continue to press and tell herself not to be stupid again. That night, Xiaoqing and Chen Manlin had a date for dinner, and the two sat in a seafood restaurant, eating and chatting. Manlin glanced at her, and talked in her voice. "Why? Lin Ziran hasn't come to worry about you recently. Are you really a little lost?" Xiaoqing was stunned and hurriedly refused. "How is that possible? Come on, who is your expression terrible?" Manlin rolled her eyes, stuffed her pussy into her mouth, and continued, "Seriously, Ziran is a scumbag that year, but the performance of this period is really kind of honest. If you really don't plan to give him a chance, you should explain it clearly earlier and don't drag it so that he can't keep hope." Xiaoqing lowered her head and took a sip of the soup, but she didn't answer, but she felt a little terrible. She knew that Manlin had a reasonable point, but she also knew that the hurdle in her heart was not so easy to pass. The pain that year was like a thorn, which was too deep and would tear it open together with the flesh and blood when pulled out. She didn't dare to catch it, nor did she want to hurt again. At the same time, Ziran was not idle either. Although he no longer took the initiative to look for Xiaoqing, he did one thing silently. He began to investigate the reason for the breakup that year. When they broke up that year, Xiaoqing only said, "We are not suitable," and then left without looking back. Ziran always thought that he was not good, but recently I heard that Zhou Hao mentioned it accidentally that there seemed to be a different reason that year, which was a mistake he didn't know. Ziran found a few old friends of that year, and then called them back, and finally learned the truth from someone they knew each other. It turned out that the reason why Ni and Xiaoqing suddenly broke up was because she heard a saying that Ziran and another girl were confused, and some even seen them into the hotel together. Xiaoqing believed it as true and hurt her heart, so she chose to cut it twice. At that time, Ziran was busy with work and young, so she didn't explain it well at all, so the two of them were so wrong. The moment he learned the truth, Ziran felt like he was struck by lightning, sitting at home, his brain full of pictures of that year. He finally understood why Xiaoqing was so desperate, and finally realized that the pain in her heart over the years was deeper than he had imagined. He clenched his fists tightly, wishing he could immediately hit Xiaoqing and tell everything clearly, but he also knew that Xiaoqing would not easily believe him now. "Howzy, what should I do?" Ziran called Zhou Hao, and the voice was full of helplessness. "I didn't know what happened that year. If I had asked it earlier and explained it earlier, I might not have been like this now." Zhou Hao was talking and said seriously, "Brother, no matter how much you say in the past, it would be useless. All you can do now is to let her see your feelings." The man Xiaoqing is hard-mouthed and soft-hearted. If you really want to save it, don't just say it, take out your movements and let her know that you are not the bastard of that year. Ziran clicked a little, quit the phone, sat on the sofa and was stunned. Then he suddenly stood up, took out his cell phone, and sent Xiaoqing a message. "Xiqing, can you see it? Some words, I want to tell you in person." After the information was sent out, Ziran felt like a stone hanging in his heart, so nervous. He thought Xiaoqing would not return, but after more than 10 minutes, the mobile phone screen suddenly lit up. Xiaoqing replied, "Tomorrow night, the seaside will say." Seeing this message, Ziran was happy and replied quickly, "Okay, I'll wait for you." The next night, on the seaside road in Haining City, the evening wind was filled with a little smell, making people's faces slight. Ziran arrived early, standing next to the column on the road, holding a bottle of water in his hand, glanced at the intersection without any time, as tight as a little boy who had his first appointment. After about 20 minutes, Xiaoqing's figure finally appeared. She was wearing a simple beige dress, with her hair casually, and walked over slowly and still had that cold expression on her face. "Say, what's the matter?" Xiaoqing stopped in front of him and walked a few steps away, putting her hands in her clothes pocket. Her language was as calm as if she was talking about business. Ziran took a deep breath and plucked up his courage and opened his mouth. "Xiqing, I know the reason for the breakup that year. I asked someone a few days ago, and then I realized that you heard some rumors, saying that I was confused with others. But I swear that those are all fake. I have never done anything I regretted you. I didn't explain it clearly that year, it was my fault. I thought you just didn't want to be with me anymore, so... It's too late." Xiaoqing interrupted him, trembling with a trembling voice. "Ziran, what's the use of saying these things now? I believed those words that year because I didn't feel safe, because you never made me think that you really care about me. You are busy with your work and your compensation. What's the matter with me? You'll always be the last one to know. You said you haven't done anything that I'm sorry for me, but have you ever thought about how much pain I was at that time?" Ziran was stunned, as if her throat was blocked by something and could not speak. He looked at the slight light in Xiaoqing's eyes, and his heart felt as if it was cut by a knife. He said in a low voice, "Xiqing, I'm sorry. I was too stupid at that time and didn't think of your feelings. I know I'm wrong. I have been regretting these years. If I could come back again, I wouldn't have let you suffer so much." Xiaoqing didn't say anything, but turned her head to look at the sea. The water slid down her face and was quickly wiped off by her. She took a deep breath, her voice so low that she could hardly hear. "Ziran, I don't want to mention the past. I'm doing very well now, really. Don't complain anymore, let's stop here." This was like a heavy note, hitting Ziran's heart. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but looking at Xiaoqing's desperate eyes, everything stuck in his throat. He knew that the wounds in her heart were not good, and he knew that no matter how much she said now, she could not change anything. "Okay, I respect your decision. Ziran finally opened her mouth, and her voice seemed to be suppressing something. But Xiaoqing, I finally said, I love you, I always love you. If you figure it out one day and I'm willing to give me an opportunity, I will always be waiting for you. Xiaoqing didn't turn around, but just clicked on it, then turned around and walked forward along the road, with her back looking particularly thin under the lights. Ziran stood there, watching her walk farther and farther away, and her heart seemed to be hollowed out, but he didn't chase after him because he knew that what he needed was time now, not his persecution. In the next few weeks, Ziran really didn't take the initiative to contact Xiaoqing anymore. He focused on running his own company, occasionally drinking with Zhou Hao and talking about past events, and his life was quiet and empty. And Xiaoqing also seemed to have returned to her normal life, working, getting off work, and getting together with Manlin. There was no difference on the surface, but there was always a hint in her heart. Until one evening a month later, after Xiaoqing got off work, he walked to the sea by chance. She stood where she was talking to Ziran, looking at the sun on the sea. Her brain was full of what he said that night. Over the past few days, she repeatedly thought about the past, Ziran's changes, and the unhidden movement in her heart. Maybe she really should give each other an opportunity, even if it's just a trial. She took out her cell phone, hesitated for a long time, and finally got Ziran's number. The phone rang a few times, and the sound of the head was somewhat surprised when he came to him. Xiaoqing? What's wrong? Ziran, are you free? I'll say in the sea. Xiaoqing's voice was a little light, as if she was afraid of being rejected. Ziran was stunned for a moment, and was filled with joy in his innate language. I have time. I'll come here immediately, wait for me. After hanging the phone, Xiaoqing leaned against the column and looked at the sea far away. The tightness in her heart was slowly replaced by a piece of warmth. It took not long before Ziran's figure appeared in the middle of the road. He ran a little anxiously, with a smile on his face that was difficult to cover up. The moment he saw Xiaoqing, he stopped and panted, asking, Xiaoqing, you look for me, are you, what do you want to say? Xiaoqing looked at him, was silent for a few seconds, and then said lightly, Ziran, let's try it. But I have to say it first, I can't trust you immediately as I used to, we have to come slowly. If you can't do it, then I don't say it. When Ziran heard this, she seemed to be hit by a huge joy and kept busy. I can do it. Xiaoqing, thank you for your willingness to give me this opportunity. I promise that I will never disappoint you this time. Xiaoqing didn't say anything, but turned her head to look at the sea, and a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Ziran stood beside her, accompanied her to watch Xiang slowly sinking into the sea level, and her heart was filled with satisfaction. He knew that this journey of pursuing his wife was still very long, and there were too many problems between them to be solved, but at least now, they finally took the first step. The sea breeze blows lightly, and people on the road often come, with two figures standing shoulder to shoulder, like the warmest scenery in this city. The road ahead is still long, but they all understand that as long as they are around each other, all trials will have a final say.